We've all had a bad boss in our times. Some of you may have a bad boss right now. So, of course, we all daydream about one day getting revenge on them. But some people actually acted on their desires. These are workers who got revenge on their boss. Number 15. Wet revenge. You must be really annoyed with someone to go through all the effort of climbing onto a roof with a bucket of water in hand just to exact some sweet wet revenge. That's just what this devious guy did, as he patiently waited for his target to arrive through the building's exit below. The target in question was his poor boss, who must have had absolutely no idea what was about to hit him. I sure hope they had a towel on hand or a change of clothes nearby, because they will surely need them. Stepping outside to get into their car to go home after a long day at the office, the unsuspecting boss certainly didn't think his next shower was gonna come so soon. Before the boss could even fill his lungs with more than a deep breath of fresh air, he was swiftly soaked in water by his cunning and revengeful worker who was waiting on the rooftop above. Let's hope the boss has a sense of humor, or they might just find themselves out of a job before they can get the word sorry out of their mouth. Like this video, smash the subscribe button and click the notification bell right now, or this centipede will crawl on your face when you're sleeping. Now it's time for the odd topic. The guy driving this cement mixer had been treated like a piece of you-know-what for years by his boss. After tolerating the harassment and bullying for almost a decade, he finally couldn't take it anymore. Mere moments after this road had been paved, he decided to drive right through, ruining the whole thing. From what we've heard, he then jumped out of the vehicle, quit, and never came back. What a legend. Would you ever do something like this at work? Comment down below with the hashtag #OddTopic and let us know your opinion in relation to what we just showed on screen. With that said, let's keep things moving. Number 14. Employee keys his boss's car. Talk about getting caught red-handed. A man in Arizona was fired from his job at an auto shop, so he thought he would leave a parting gift when he returned to pick up his personal belongings. By parting gift, I mean keying his former boss's Corvette. Whilst he probably felt pretty smug at getting his revenge for his dismissal, his little stunt had a larger audience than he could have ever thought. The former boss had a feeling the former employee was going to do something, even going so far as saying to the employee after firing them, "You're not going to do anything to my car, are you?" Luckily for the former boss, and unluckily for the annoyed ex-employee, CCTV caught the whole thing on camera. Not only this, but multiple employees saw the stunt with their own eyes. This revenge strategy certainly backfired, as the former employee was charged with criminal damage and forced to pay for the Corvette to be resprayed, a fee which cost almost $4,000. Ouch, I don't think he'll be getting a good reference letter. Number 13. Furious worker smashes boss's car on live TV. Getting on the wrong side as someone who drives an enormous digger for a living is never gonna end well, especially if your expensive car is left unguarded within its reach. Live on TV, the revenge of a coworker is exacted out in brutal, metal-crushing fashion. Living the dreams of many disgruntled employees around the world, the driver of a giant digger smashes the car under the huge wheels. After a little struggle with being unable to run fully over the car thanks to the icy ground, the driver has an idea. Through using the digger's massive scoop to bash the car's roof in with one fatal swoop, the car is quickly turned into a mechanical pancake, with the digger running over the Mercedes full length with ease. The only sign of life is a small flashing of one of the headlights. Something tells me that car's not gonna start anytime soon. Choosing to perform the act of revenge whilst an interview's taking place was audacious, although it'll be hard to claim innocence when there's literally footage of the stunt happening. Number 12. Employee attacks boss's Ferrari. Note to self, don't annoy a crazy truck driver. When a truck driver was hired by a hauling company, they probably thought life was on the up. That was until 4 days into the role, he had only been given one trip. Unhappy, angry, and probably with rent due soon, the driver took their frustrations up with management. The company informed him that they were not happy with his behavior and they decided to let him go. Despite fully compensating the worker, the driver was not the least bit happy. When you have someone angry at you in control of a truck, just know it's not a good sign. The worker asked his boss if the Ferrari GTC 4 Lusso parked out front was his, and rather foolishly, the boss said yes. That car, worth over 200,000 pounds, wasn't going to be operational for much longer. After getting into his truck, the fired employee slammed on the pedals and drove straight into and over the stationary sports car. The boss could only stand and watch in horror as his precious car was turned into a pile of expensive scrap metal. But, I mean, what did they expect to happen if you tell a person you just fired that your luxury car is that one outside? A compliment? Number 11. Construction workers destroy boss's car. You really need to be careful who you get on the wrong side of, with this boss certainly learning that the hard way. Not being able to find your car is a frustrating situation to find yourself in. Searching your brain for where you last parked it just feels like one big hazy daze. Well, maybe you left it in a spot around the corner you've forgotten about. Or if you're this unlucky boss, then you haven't left it anywhere unusual, but it's simply just been moved. If you thought your car being towed away was the worst of your worries, then let me shock you. When these construction workers decided to exact revenge on their boss, they chose to strike them where it hurts: the car. After bashing the car with remarkable ease through using a digger's claw, the pain was only just getting started. Even though the damage was beyond repair, these revengeful workers took things one step further and scooped up what remained of the automobile, which was functional until about 5 seconds ago. Driving up to the cliff drop, the truck then tips the car down the rocky terrain to a solemn ending. The creators of this destruction can be heard laughing in delight. I just want to know what a boss could have done to deserve such an attack. Whatever it is, they won't be making the same mistake again. Number 10. Builders destroy home. If you don't get paid on time, the logical step is to take out a chainsaw and go through a thrashing frenzy. At least that's what these builders from down under decided to do when their boss failed to pay their invoices for work. Filmed on camera for all the social media world to see, these wild builders from Australia took out their revenge on the wooden housing supports with the machinery instead of filing their grievances with HR. The metal blades of the chainsaw easily cut through the wood, undoing the unpaid work in minutes. Although I don't see how this act of revenge is gonna help them in their desire to be paid. What if the boss turns around and says, "Okay, I'll pay you," and then they have to explain why they tore down all of their work in an act of getting their own back? One thing is for certain, both the builders and the boss's reputation are gonna take a hit. I'm just glad they didn't exact their chainsaw revenge further down the line. Imagine if the house was fully built and they slung a wrecking ball at it due to delayed payment. Number 9. Digger smashes garage door. I'm sure these people wish they had chosen a better time to fire their contractor, preferably when he wasn't behind the wheel of a digger. Being fired is an emotional time for anyone. You don't know if you're going to be able to find another job, and it can even lead people to become angry with themselves for not performing as well as they can. But firing someone who's in control of a digger and is right by your property is not a good mix. And is a mistake I'm sure these people aren't gonna be making again. When the contractor gets fired, he exacts his revenge in the form of crushing the entrance to 2 and almost 3 garages. The garage doors fold like a potato chip wrapper under the might of the digger, with the tirade only stopped after the assumed owners throw their bodies between the digger and the 3rd garage door. Talk about not taking bad news well. Number 8. Employees tamper with boss's chair. Bosses around the world will never be able to comfortably lean back in their chair and work again after seeing this. When disgruntled employees had an issue with their boss, who's on the heavier side of things, they decided to plot revenge in the form of tampering with his office chair. They cunningly took a tool and loosened the chair's structure when the boss wasn't around. Through hiding a hidden camera, they simply sat back and waited for the portly man to return. Completely oblivious to the plan, the boss strolls in and takes a seat on his comfy black chair. Immediately, he picks up the phone, holds it to his ear, and leans back trying to get comfortable in his seat. Immediately, the chair completely falls apart, causing the boss to crash to the floor as the pieces of the chair lie scattered on the floor. The plan may have worked, but if the boss uses his investigative skills and discovers the culprits, they might be made to make a direct trip to the job center. Number 7. Drunk worker gets revenge on boss. We all know you shouldn't drink alcohol and drive. Well, someone should have told this guy. When a man turned up to a shift at his demolition company in Bradford, England, he clearly saw nothing wrong with having a few drinks beforehand. Much to his shock and anger, the worker was turned away and told he wasn't fit to work. However, fellow employees are still trying to work out what was going through his mind when he decided to get behind the wheel of a digger and exact his revenge on the company. Through smashing his boss's 100,000-pound Range Rover as well as a truck in a fit of rage with a digger, the man was clearly not happy. And neither were his fellow workers, who dragged the man out of the truck and threw him on the floor, with the police quickly being called. Most people would be ecstatic to be told to go home and sleep, but clearly not this guy. Well, there'll be plenty of time for him to drink when he's sitting around looking for employment, although what a way to go out. He certainly left an impression. Number 6. Angry worker destroys travel lodge. Imagine being woken up by a man in a digger tearing away at the ground floor of your hotel. That's the reality for people staying in this travel lodge when an angry construction worker got into the machine and plowed straight through the entrance of the hotel and wrecked the place. After starting off with the exterior windows, the enraged man was clearly enjoying himself as he continued his rampage and tore through the walls and ceiling of the lobby. Co-workers could only look on in disbelief, with the few attempts to get him to come out falling on deaf ears. Why would someone do such an act? The worker was apparently owed £600 for his work, so he decided that taking out the interior of the ground floor was a decent way of revenge. The driver and the people on the floors above were very lucky the building didn't just collapse in on itself. After finally exiting the building in the digger, the man looked like his next target was the cars in the car park as he menacingly rolled towards them with himself still behind the wheel. Thankfully, 2 cunning workers disarmed the digger by working their magic on the machine's engine, which could be accessed through an outside flap from the back of the machine. One thing's for sure, it's gonna cost him more than £600 to fix his destructive rampage. Number 5. Worker sets boss's SUV on fire. I've been annoyed by my fair share of people throughout my life, but I've never wanted to set someone's car on fire. When a disgruntled employee was fired by their boss, they turned to fire to find revenge. Seeing their SUV as a way to cause damage, the employee orchestrated a pretty simple plan. Doused their boss's vehicle in gasoline and set it on fire. Sounds pretty simple, but it was more than effective. After the employee was spotted covering the vehicle in the liquid, they still continued with their plan of revenge. The understandably startled bystander quickly rushed to get a hose to put out the fire, but the water pressure was comically bad, and the water just dripped pathetically onto the floor. Not very helpful, as you can imagine. So what about the car? Well, the blaze continued its destruction of the car until finally a group of firemen turn up on the scene and smother the fire in water. Talk about dramatic. Number 4. Worker pulls down silo. Silos are basically humongous structures used to store bulk materials. Or if you're this worker, they're actually great targets to exact revenge with and cause a mighty crash in the process. I can only imagine what the boss of this worker must have done to get on their employee's bad side. One thing's for sure, things aren't gonna be patched over easily anytime soon. Through using a large construction vehicle to pull the silo over, the large structure comes crashing to the floor with a thud similar to a tree being taken down by a tree surgeon. Except in this instance, it's safe to say they weren't asked to do the act. The audacious employees, fellow workers, were clearly amazed and entertained by the act, as they can be heard laughing from behind the camera. At least no one was hurt if we're really trying to see the positives in all this, although you'd assume the culprit's gonna live to regret the act. Number 3. Worker flips over car. If you're gonna pick a fight with someone, just make sure you have a bigger vehicle. This mine worker was trying to stop a group of cars from leaving the mine. I'm not exactly sure why, but he seemed pretty desperate, as he was almost run over by a reversing car. If someone tried to run me over with their car, I wouldn't be too happy either. Well, this mine worker took it one step further and immediately jumped into his digger after a heated exchange with another person. As soon as he got into the digger, it all went downhill from there. After roaring the engine to life, the enraged man exacted his revenge through driving directly at the other person's stagnant car. All the other person could do was watch on in horror as their car was flipped over effortlessly by the digger. But that was far from the end of the rampage, as the digger quickly turned its attention to another target. Sadly, the video cuts out as the digger exits the site and into the car park. We can only assume they're on the hunt for the person who tried to run over the driver of the digger earlier. Imagine looking in your rearview mirror and seeing a pissed off mine worker behind the wheel of a powerful digger heading straight towards you. Number 2. Unpaid worker destroys boss's new car. If you owe some people money, the last thing you should do is rub your wealth in their face. While this might seem like common sense for most, this boss had to learn the hard way when he turned up to work in a new car. If you haven't been getting paid for the last 3 months, you're probably gonna be at the very end of your bank account, not to mention your nerves. This worker, who was owed 3 months' pay by his boss, clearly believed the reasons offered to him for the delay. But when the boss turned up to the worksite in a new car, clearly something switched in his mood. The employee had enough of his excuses, which were clearly all a web of lies. If you can afford a flashy new car, you can certainly pay your workers. After quickly getting into the seat of a digger, the furious employee slashed through the luxury car like a warm knife through butter. The roof caved in with ease under the weight of the digger's claw. After multiple swipes, the car was put well and truly out of service. The worker got their revenge, and the boss's car was left looking like it had been involved in a multiple car pileup on the highway. Only moments earlier, the car looked like it belonged in a showroom. Now it would only fit in at a scrapyard's landscape. Number 1. Fired worker attacks boss's office. Someone needs to tell this boss how to fire people. Deciding to fire a worker is perfectly allowed in the business world. Sometimes you just have to let someone go. While there are usually good reasons behind the decision, no one comes to that decision without some deep thought on the matter. However, if you're gonna cast someone out of your company, don't leave them alone in your office directly after you've done the deed. When this worker was let go and left inside her boss's office, to say she didn't take the news well would be the understatement of the century. After flying into a fit of anger, she targeted her now former boss's laptop. God knows what kind of precious documents were stored on there, but after almost snapping it in two, she proceeded to stomp on the device. Safe to say it won't be turning on anytime soon. My favorite part is right at the end of the clip when the boss returns to the crime scene after giving her time to cool off and come to terms with the redundancy. He quickly sees the aftermath of her rampage. All he can do is stare at her in shock. That is one way not to take bad news. I feel sorry for any partner who tries to break up with her. She might snap you in half too. These revenge plots must have gone down in folklore at their workplace, although I can't imagine the punishments afterwards were too fun. If you were to get revenge on your employer, what would your plan look like? Do you have any tales of workers getting revenge on their bosses? Also, check out our other cool stuff showing up on screen right now. See you next time!